This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
If you are working on getting healthier, losing weight, improving your fitness, whatever it is, but you have this feeling that you should be getting better results, you're just not sure what you might be doing wrong. Well, I want to tell you, you are not alone. And that is the very reason why I wrote my latest book, 5 Ways You're Wrecking Your Weight Loss, so that you can take a look at 5 of the most common reasons I see that people aren't getting the results that they deserve for all their hard work. Just 5 really quick fixes that can get you headed toward the results that you want. Check it out. You can download it by going to beginwithin.fit, clicking on the ebook button, or clicking on the link in the show notes. Check out my book. Let me know what you think. My guest today is Rachel Oz. She is a psychologist and an author. And we're going to talk today about something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about here on the Begin Within podcast, but it is a huge, huge piece of our health, of our well-being, and absolutely has a huge role in how we show up as human beings. And that is the area of our connection with others, or our connections with others. If we view each relationship that we have as another connection, those absolutely have a bearing on our health, on our wellness, right? Not just psychological and emotional, but also physical. There is no question that how we're feeling in our connections with others has a real bearing on those other things. And you know, a long time ago when we were talking about the 5 pillars that we were going to build Begin Within around in terms of coaching and in terms of this podcast, we identified connection with others, connection with nature, just how we connect out, how we reach out and interact with the world around us as a major piece that needs to be addressed when it comes to health, when it comes to wellness, when it comes to fitness, when it even comes to weight loss, which I know is a goal for so many of you, and that may be why you found this podcast in the first place. And now you're on this wild ride of looking at all these different little things that play a role in what happens with your body physically. You're learning about all these other things, and that is awesome. Isn't it? Isn't that great? That's what we started out to do, is to shed light on all those other areas. And our connection with others is super important. We looked at it this way. We said, you know, if we had someone who's showing up into workouts with us as a team, but as they're working out, they start telling us that they're super stressed out about some huge relationships in their lives that were falling apart, that were really creating a lot of negative feelings and emotions for them, that there was definitely a point where we would say, you know what, this is not the place for you to be right now. You should be somewhere else to take care of those connections. Those are essential to your health and to your well-being. And so I'm telling you that as we set this up, because Rachel and I are going to talk a lot about connections, and in particular, how we can begin to play a more active role in fostering really positive connections with the people around us. That's the focus of our interview. So I really hope you enjoy it. Here is my interview with Rachel Oz.
Well, I think it started with the wisdom of being a child. And as a child, I didn't even think or have any edits as we typically don't.
Right.
And so that informs and has over my lifetime in profound ways of knowing who I am, of knowing I love to be in front of people primarily one-on-one and be present to them and play with them. And, of course, the word play takes different forms as we grow older, but it's still about pursuing joy and meaning and depth and light. And so that informed me being a psychologist, and also just classes I took over time, and my value, whether conscious or unconscious, as I was growing up, of listening. And people saying, Rachel, you're such a good listener, or people really revealing their secrets and vulnerabilities to me consistently.
Yeah.
And so there were just all these clues. And so there's that part, but also in terms of the art and writing, I've loved to do that since I was little. And so like I had in 6th grade, I had pictures of rainbows in different variations, like wallpaper covering every wall of my bedroom, So there are these clues when we're young, if we lean in to listen about who is it I am and what will help nurture me as a person. And so there's this integrative piece as I grow older about listening to that little girl who's so brilliant. And then also she's matured. And so there's also, just coming back to some of those things. So really in my early 40s is when I started to dive back in a deeper way to include also the art and the writing. And that's when I started doing my books and my art, as well as my psychology practice more seriously again.
Yeah, I like, and I know I'm not here to judge what you said, but I guess I personally, I was drawn to when you said, like, as a child, we don't have edits.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about that? Like what you mean by that? And I guess how does that influence what you do and maybe the rest of us to try to stop editing so much?
Yeah. Well,
Go
when I
ahead. I gotta
say,
my dog wants to leave the room, so
oh,
hit it. I'll probably edit this
okay.
out, but
Okay.
he
Well,
sorry, he always sleeps all the time
yes.
in the office here. And then of course, as soon as we get rolling, he's like looking out the window and
Right.
sorry,
Because these are our
Rachel.
real lives though, right? I
We're gonna
know. It's
edit.
like,
We're talking about edits. Maybe I won't edit that out now that we're talking about it, but
I know, because it's all part of it, right?
all
Like the
right.
wild parts of us too. That's awesome. The creatures of us, like paying attention to what we need.
Yes.
Okay. So the editing, when we're young and as we start to grow, often in middle school, or, just as we grow older, we learn to start to edit because we think, okay, I don't belong, or I'm not accepted, or I'm being rejected, or, if I show this part of me, so-and-so doesn't like me, or I get teased for it, or it doesn't fit in some role in a family system. And so we begin to find, and then we conversely learn, well, if I express these parts of me, I get positive attention, or I perceive it as positive attention, whether it's from love interests or whether it's from family members who you feel ignored by, or all kinds of different things where we find that, okay, I can let this part of me out. I shouldn't let this part of me out, things like that.
Okay.
And some of us experience, of course, more of that than others. And so I just think that the invitation as we grow older is this beautiful doorway into coming back home to who we are. And I think in terms of doing that, of course, sometimes it's helpful to get support around doing that, seeing a counselor or something like that. But also, I I think that it's always a great clue to notice what brings you joy. So, for example, it could just be little things like, I remember choosing more and more bold options in my adulthood about what brought me joy. So, for example, when Dayton's department store was a thing, um, I remember being in their eyeglasses department, and I was trying on different glasses. And the green and purple pair that I kept trying on and looking in the mirror, I couldn't stop giggling. And then I'd put them down, and then I'd try the brown pair. And then I'd be like, yeah, those look good on my face, you know. And no offense to anyone who loves brown, because like I love all colors. But the point is, what brings Rachel joy, or what brings you joy, Nate, or particular listeners. And so at the time, actually, I ended up getting both. But and then I kept making decisions like that, like what makes me giggle, what makes me feel, what's my most alive choice, you know. And as I kept following those things, it just was like this domino of life givingness. So it's such a gorgeous way of taking care of ourselves.
I was laughing because I don't know, I'm sure some people that are closer to me will be listening, but I love black. Like I'm sitting here in a black sweatshirt. Everything, like I'll be walking down the street in all black, and I don't know why, but we're the opposite ends of that spectrum, I think, Rachel.
I know, it's so funny. I'm wearing like tans, and like I'm wearing some earthy colors today, which is really funny. I'm joining you. I will say that sometimes like at night when I'm tired, kicked back reading or watching TV, or I want really mellow tones on. Like I need the rest from all my color in the day, because more often I do wear a lot of color. And so for me, I need the balance of rest with color even. But I think like with you and black, it's completely fantastic if you feel good in it. Like that's the point, is noticing what you feel drawn into and what brings you feeling alive and joyful. And
I don't know if it's alive. It's just like it's more comfortable. Even, I had the opportunity to help pick out our work uniforms for our team and stuff. And I'm like, we're in black. We're all wearing black. Okay. And other people are like, come on. And I'm like, how could you not love it? Like, it matches with everything. Like it's just,
yes, you're right.
Functional. You're right. My whole wardrobe is just black. My wife never has to wonder what color is he gonna want of this thing.
That's right. That's right. It's and comforting maybe in that way in terms of predictability too. No, I think comfort matters a lot too.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that, including are clothes comfortable? Like I never like anything too tight around my waist, or you know what I'm saying? It's like knowing your body and what feels comfortable to you, how soft something is, or all those things.
Okay. I don't know where the connection is. I want to dive into like other relationships, because that's a big part, as we were talking before we kind of started. From my perspective, when it comes to just health, having healthy relationships with yourself, so important, but also the connections outside of that. What, from your perspective, your opinion, and your experience, are some of the best ways to nurture the relationships that we have with others?
Yes. Well, I think that there's numerous, where do we even begin with that, right? Because our nurturing relationships with others is so multifaceted. So I agree. I think the first step is our relationship with ourselves, and making sure we're taking the time to deliver ourselves flowers, right? And to create wild and beautiful experiences for ourselves, and having a voice and listening down deep to what it is we need, and taking care of all the different parts of us, right? The little part, the wise part, all the parts. And I could probably talk about that for a whole day workshop. So I feel like it all flows out of that, because if I am being with myself, if I'm being and becoming the person I want to be with, because I think that's the first step. Am I being who I want to be with? Then I can offer that person to select others who treat me super well and who I treat super well. Um, and so when it comes to nurturing relationship with others, I would say um, that the first thing is taking the time to really listen.
Mm.
I think that that is sometimes a lost art, that asking and being curious about someone else. Like it's almost like you're being a detective in a respectful way.
Mhm.
But being curious about someone, right? Like asking questions. How are you doing? How are you feeling when that happened? What opened up in you? What closed up? What did that bring up for you? How's that going for you? What do you think you might need? What's bringing you joy lately? What do you love? Tell me about what you love. These are just questions that are just sort of pouring out of me in a brainstorm. But the truth is, we all love to be attended to, right? And it can be on a lighter level, like, oh my gosh, what's your favorite recipes these days? What are your favorite Netflix things you're watching? What oh my gosh, what are you going to wear tomorrow? I don't know. Like it could be a whole range of things on a lighthearted, playful, fun level, right? And then it can also be like, what's on your heart? Or like, what are you loving lately? Or what's weighing on you? Like also even asking the question, how can I be supportive to you? What would be a most meaningful way for me to be here for you? So I just think it can be really fun and meaningful to be curious, but then to really take the time to listen.
Mhm.
And then when you do hear people speak, the next thing I'm going to say is probably one of the most missed steps, and that is to say back what you hear. So if someone says, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed lately with like I've been working a ton of hours and I get home and then it's like figuring out whatever with the kids and food and then, all these other things. And to then pause and really hear that person and try to reflect it back like, oh, so you're feeling like this is really a lot because there's such a pile up in your days. And it's this cumulative thing you're really feeling. Is that what you're saying? And they'd say, yes, because it feels so good to be heard. So I think those are just a few, I could say more, but those are a few of the things that spill out of me initially.
Yeah. So you said repeating back what you hear.
Yeah.
And that's such a key part of listening. It correct me if I'm wrong, but because that lets that other individual know that they were heard.
Exactly, Nate.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Right. So, and it's especially, well, it feels great when you're sharing something really special and wonderful, with your spouse, with your friend, with your whoever. Um, and it feels so good, like to be able to hear it back, the special thing, like you really heard me about my special thing, and then it can be a little bit difficult, but still really helpful if there's some conflict. If someone is trying to communicate something where you have some tension with them and where you don't have to agree with them, but to be able to say what you're hearing back, oh, so what you're saying is when I came in and didn't say hello to you, that you felt invisible and like I didn't, whatever. And then they would say, yes, that's how I felt. Like, so, but that can be harder to do when there's conflict to reflect it back because your own defenses may be there. And, but it's an invaluable relationship builder.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
so what I want to ask, I don't know if I'm going to ask this the right way. So
Okay, great.
hopefully you'll get it.
Great. Be wildly imperfect, Nate.
I feel like I've taken some coaching courses and workshops, and I feel like after those I'm so energized to do what you mentioned, but I've noticed like over time, if I'm not putting some effort into it, it kind of trails off, and I maybe default into more of just talking and less listening.
Mm.
What So my question is, how does someone stop that from happening? Or is it just a matter of
Mm.
putting the intention in and kind of trying to develop the habit of
Mhm.
putting that on in order to
Mhm.
serve others on a
Mhm.
regular basis?
Mhm.
Does that make
Yes,
sense?
yes, it does. Perfect. Okay, right. That, and I think we can all sometimes tip there where, okay, I'm finding it's a little out of balance. I'm doing more talking than listening, and how can I begin to create, more balance there? What would be helpful? And of course, there's going to be individual differences and different reasons depending on the individual as to why that may be happening. Um, what I want to say is, certainly you said, is it just a matter of being intentional? I want to leave more space to listen, and certainly that's part of it. I would say I just had sort of a gut intuitive sort of thing come up as I heard you being curious about that.
Oh.
And it's not necessarily just for you. It's a general thing for humanity, which I would be included. So no need for and that is that maybe I'll even say I language for myself. If I find that I am doing more talking than listening, I might wonder about a couple things for me. I might think, ooh, this is also a good opportunity for me to do some extra self-care and self-love, because I might need it.
Mm.
Meaning I might not feel listened to enough uh, because I'm doing more talking in general. And so, do I need to set up more supports in my life so I have spaces where I'm being listened to? Whether it's, well, maybe I'll give myself, if I can, the gift of a counselor or a coach or a spiritual director, or um, there could be numerous different people that I could literally hire if I could afford it, um, to give myself more consistent listeners, which might create in me more space to listen to others.
Mm.
But also, if I'm doing more talking than listening, it could also be a sign that I have some level of anxiety or some kind of extra thirst going on inside. And so it might be nice to add in a practice for myself of doing something that really helps to calm my body and my mood, so that I'm in a more regulated, sort of settled place inside. So if I'm doing some kind of meditation practice, or yoga, or Tai Chi, or we could brainstorm different practices that tend to calm the body and mind, that if I am engaged in those, I will probably, if I'm in a more regulated, settled, calm body, I'm just setting myself up to be in a better spot to listen.
Mm.
Those
Mm.
are thoughts
Yeah.
just off the top, Nate.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I
Okay.
think, I guess what kind of came up for me as you were responding, and I
Mhm.
was listening, but also listening to my thoughts. I was the idea of maybe I'm not feeling heard, and some of the ideas you shared for me made me think of different ways that we can kind of listen more to ourselves. How can I, like you said, how can I take care of myself?
Yeah.
Go for me, it's like I'm like, okay, I need a walk by myself
Yes.
outside,
By yourself.
or I call it porching
Yeah.
now. I just sit on the back porch.
Oh my gosh.
We have
Yes.
trees all, I'm just sitting, get kind of like get bored. Like let your brain get bored so you can
Yes.
listen and
I
not
love that.
other people's thoughts coming at you 24/7. Just tune in a little bit.
Get
So,
a little bored. I love that direct statement, because we all know what that means.
right.
Because we all know, if I get a little bored, there's a restlessness about that, isn't there? But it means probably we're giving ourselves a bit of quiet.
Yeah.
And it maybe means I might hear myself in that.
Mm-hmm.
And how will that be for me? But I think that the way you talked about porching or going on a walk, and sometimes a walk in nature too can be extra supportive, right? That and when you were saying those things, I also thought of journaling. For some people like that. That sometimes you can move, once you're doing that enough, you can move through the boredom and into a different kind of state of peace. But sometimes we have to sort of wrestle our way through that, right? Of feeling like I'm bored, I don't like this, I'm uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I need some notifications. I need to know what to look
Yes.
at. Somebody else tell me. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Oh,
Right, right.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope that we can someday down the line continue.
Awesome.
Come on again.
Thank
But I
you.
want to talk about you mentioned your writing. I want to talk about have you talk about your latest book if you would. Just
That'd
tell
be
us a little
great.
bit about it,
Okay.
how we can check it out, and
Okay.
then yeah,
Okay.
what's the latest work from Rachel?
Okay. All righty. So it's like we're in kindergarten. I'm going to show you the
Yeah.
visual. Okay. So here it is, the cover, and it's called The Relationship Book.
Okay.
And then the subtitle, it's kind of a long subtitle, A Soulful, Transformational, and Artistic Inventory of Your Connective Life. So it's has 9 chapters, and it's goes through different kinds of relationships: relationship with myself, with animals like your dog,
Okay.
with clothing, with food, with humans, with community, with divinity. And each page spread has an anonymous therapy quote from one of my clients that really moved me in some way, along with my written reflection and my colorful illustrations. And then the end of each chapter allows the reader to, if they want to reflect on a whole bunch of summary questions from the chapter for their own personal journaling, or just thinking, or porching, or book club, you know. And so, yeah, and so that's what it's about. So it's kind of a category of self-help or personal growth or gift books.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes available for pre-order October 3rd.
Okay.
And it'll be available initially in my online shop, which you can find by just going to racheloz.com. And on my website, there's like the top header where you can click on things, shop, blog, things like that. And so you just would click on my shop.
Yeah. I'll make sure there's a
Mhm.
link with this episode in the show notes. So
Great.
I have one last question for you. And that is about beginning. I think if specifically when it comes to maybe relationships, I feel like we landed there and it felt really, really good.
Yeah.
When it comes to taking steps to improve those connections, what would you recommend as the best first step for someone to take?
The very first step that occurs to me is setting yourself up to be in the best spot you can with your relationships. And so I think it would begin with asking yourself, am I supported enough myself in order to give that support to others? Am I being listened to enough in order to provide luxurious listening to others?
Okay.
And so just taking stock, of what can I do so that I feel more supported, including by myself. How am I supporting me? Am I giving myself time to porch, to walk, to journal, to meditate, support people, a counselor, etc., so that you are as yummily and lovingly supported up like crazy as possible, so that you can begin to consider offering that wild and precious self to others.
I like it. Thank you for, was porching a verb before today?
Do you know that I've used it, but it's been a few years,
Have
but
you?
I
Okay.
thought I made it up.
Oh my
Isn't
goodness.
that funny?
Well, you definitely made it up before me because I just started the
Oh,
last, just this like late spring is when I came up with it. So,
yes, yes. And
wow.
you originally made it up too. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for jumping back on with porching.
Yes.
Rachel Oz, thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Nate.
Wow. I am so grateful that Rachel Oz was here on the show with us, and there are links for you to connect with her and her work in the show notes waiting for you. Two little points that I want to leave you with, and that is, first of all, in order to have better connections, right? And that's really the little theme on this episode is connections, because they do affect our health. They absolutely affect our health. Is, first of all, caring for ourselves, right? Logically, it makes so much sense. Care for yourself first, but really taking some time. And we talked about that, really listening. And sometimes it means that we have to disconnect a little bit. We have to get into a situation where we are bored, right? In terms of not having something to occupy our minds so that we can begin to listen to what's going on within us, to find out what needs that we might have, what adjustments we can make in the actions that we're taking to address those needs. And of course, if that's getting some help and some support from a therapist or a coach, whichever, right? And I'm definitely not here. I'm a coach, not a therapist, so I'm not saying that they're the same. There are definitely times when you may need one and not the other, and other times when you need the other and not the other one. So just tuning in, and if we're at that point where we need some extra support and some help, then to take action and do it. That might be the most important action that comes from that little listening session where we just tune in to how we're doing. And the other piece that I just loved that Rachel shared is ways that we can begin to honor, begin to improve the connections that we have with the people around us. And it can be as simple as just doing an audit of how we're doing when it comes to talking versus listening. And realizing that everybody loves to be listened to. And so if we really want to improve in the way that we have a connection, the way that we show up into that connection, that relationship, then listening is probably going to serve us really well. It almost always will serve us really, really well to make sure that we're doing more listening and a little less talking. And of course, again, why do we bring that up? We come back at this from the reason that we're here, right? Health, fitness, weight loss, whatever it is that brought you to this podcast. I know it probably wasn't thinking, I'm going to improve my relationships. This is not a relationship show. This is just a health and wellness show. But there are definitely some real things in life that are more important priorities than just improving our health, our cholesterol, our resting heart rate, our blood pressure, whatever it is, right? And if we're ignoring those bigger priorities so that we can pursue some of these fitness goals, then things in the long run aren't going to be healthy. They just aren't. And so we need to, once in a while, take a step back and see how we're showing up with the relationships and the connections that we have with the people and the world around us, so that we can truly be the healthiest possible versions of ourselves. I'm really curious about how you enjoyed this conversation, if this type of thing you would like to hear more of, or if there's some other topics that you'd love for us to dig into on this show. Please send me a message on Instagram. There's a link in the show notes that will get you there. Otherwise, you can find me at Nate Slager, and just let me know how this landed for you, this episode on connections, and also what other topics that you'd love for us to cover here on the Begin Within podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening. I want to thank you so much for following the show, for rating it and reviewing it in your podcast player if you can, and for sharing it with people that you care about, who you know could use a little bit of support, a little bit of encouragement and inspiration on their health and fitness journeys. I hope you have a wonderful day. I will talk to you next time here on the Begin Within podcast.